And what we found is that the project developers plan to fund this project with what's called a 60% debt to 40% equity split. What that means is 40% of the total project cost, which is now estimated at $5 billion US dollars, 40% of that will come from equity from the project developers. That includes Total from France, CNOOC, which is a China National Offshore Oil Corporation. It's a majority state-owned Chinese company. And then the national oil companies of Uganda and Tanzania. Each of those entities holds an ownership stake in the pipeline. Now, 60% of the total project cost is supposed to come in the form of debt. And what that means is essentially a project loan from commercial banks, export credit agencies, development finance institutions, potentially, essentially a big loan covering 60% of the total cost of the $5 billion project. So in terms of which banks are involved in the project loan, that 60% debt component of the project, there's a few categories of financiers to keep in mind. The first category is institutions that we know are involved. So that includes the financial advisors to the project. From the beginning, there were 3 financial advisors. Those include Standard Bank of South Africa, which is operating through a local Ugandan subsidiary called Stanbic Uganda, ICBC, which is a major Chinese bank, and then there was a Japanese bank called Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, SMBC, that was also involved as a financial advisor from back, many years ago. They've been involved. But actually last year, SMBC announced that they were withdrawing their role as a financial advisor in the project, which was a major victory for the campaign. I mean, it's essentially unheard of that a financial advisor that has been involved for years in advising the project developers on how to get this project bankable, how to get it off the ground, how to get it funded. For them to withdraw at this point is a major, major victory and just speaks to the strength of the campaign. So those are the 3, now 2, banks that are involved in their capacity as financial advisors. We're still waiting for confirmation about whether both of those 2 banks are going to actually put forth money for the project loan. We think it's quite likely at this stage, but they haven't yet publicly confirmed that they're actually lending to the project. But standard practice suggests that they would. Now, there are 2 other institutions that we know are involved, and that includes Afrexim Bank, which is a regional sort of development finance institution, as well as Islamic Development Bank, which is a similar type of development finance institution. Both of those banks collectively have committed a couple $100 million, which really is a drop in the bucket when you think of the size of the project loan that needs to be put forward for this project to get off the ground. And then there are the banks that we think could potentially lend to the project, but haven't yet confirmed. And so those at the moment are our big pressure points, trying to get them to make a public commitment that they won't lend to the project. And that includes, at this point, it's mostly major Chinese banks that have not yet made a public statement that they've ruled out support for the project. So those are certainly targets for the campaign. And then in addition to Chinese targets, we've heard in the media and other sources that the project developers are looking now to the Middle East as well. So potentially Middle Eastern banks. And really the turn to the Middle East and to China is a result of the success of the campaign in getting all of the major North American and European banks, or almost all of them, to publicly commit that they wouldn't fund this pipeline. So those are the banks that we know are involved.